Afghanistan means to Invictus, from my perspective, we're part of the family. That's just not some phrase that's rattled off in a tokenistic way. It's very palpable when you're here. When you see someone with their lanyard and their accreditation and they're either competing or family and friends, your family, that is a fact. And it's no different for the boys from Afghanistan.
Afghanistan have been part of that community since the beginning and represent a really important piece within that mix. Because not only are they representing soldiers and people that served alongside many of the other countries here, many of the individuals that compete at Invictus Games were injured in the conflict in Afghanistan.
Invictus to Afghan Unconquered, from my perspective, means hope, means representation, and it means a place in a broader community than where they currently live, which is in Australia. That's part of that Invictus global community, which is a beautiful thing. One thing they consistently say is that when you're here in the village or wherever, doesn't matter where you're from, they know everyone's got their back.
With the pandemic lockdown that started in 2020, the Invictus Games The Hague 2020 had to postpone and postpone not once but twice. The team that were preparing for participation in those games from Afghanistan suddenly found themselves in a situation of a regime change with the withdrawal of UK and US forces from the country. So the team that were supposed to be competing in the Invictus Games The Hague 2020 suddenly found themselves at risk of persecution through the media profile that they had been given in participation of the Invictus Games, either formally or getting ready to come. Meant that they were accused of being pro-Western, affiliating too much with Western nations, and that put a target on their back. With the change in leadership within that country, they started to reach out to us through social media, through emails, and let us know that the situation was becoming increasingly dire for them. It's quite an odd situation to kind of find yourself as a director of communication receiving things through social media and emails and starting to build out this picture of this horrible situation that was developing and not really feeling able to do anything about it. But when it became clear that their persecution and the risk that they faced was a direct consequence of their participation in the Invictus Games, it became obvious that we had to do something to try and fix the situation. It became quite clear that these individuals were genuinely at risk for their lives. It became apparent that the situation was fast escalating and that it was critical to be able to respond quickly and promptly and make sure we get to the right people at the right time. The WhatsApp group became this very bizarre link between me working from home at a farm in the UK, suddenly connected to people that were on the ground across Afghanistan where I'd never been and some of whom I'd never met. But they knew that they had someone who would try his best to support them, and they kept that pressure up and they kept the communications up in order to make sure that they had someone that was advocating for them and doing the best we could. It became very, very challenging to cope with that pressure. No one really knew what was happening and what to do, and so nations were offering flights, and so I'd get a call and say, right, they're on the roster, we have a plane for them, get them to the airport now. And then it would be the second challenge was how to get them into the airport because they were getting refused entry at the gate. And so time became critical of making sure that concurrently I had access into the airport and then a plane for them to catch. And planes were departing without them on the roster because they had to leave. That pressure escalated critically to one point where I had got them to the airport. They were waiting by one of the gates, and then a suicide bomber detonated an explosion outside the airport. And I was sent photos and videos of the aftermath and the fear that they felt and the support that they needed to keep going. So you end up with this guilt and not knowing where to send them, and have people desperately trying to get out and desperately trying to stay alive, and all I could do was just stay on my phone, down WhatsApp, and try and coordinate and connect and find another option and find another flight. I'd sleep with my phone in my hand to stay connected. Sometimes waking up to more photos and more stories of the things that had happened to them. One member of the team had a family member who was killed because they didn't give up their location. Another sent me a picture one morning, and it was a severed head in the street of someone else that had been targeted by the Taliban. Each time we had a conversation, we had to wipe the WhatsApps and not have things that were on the phone that could be identified by the Taliban if their phones were taken. So I quickly had to build out a system of storing information and backing up the WhatsApp so that I at least had a record of where they were and who they were, their passport details and IDs. So it became this really complicated matrix of not really knowing who I was talking to sometimes, because it would be a brand new number coming through, and having to connect it to their IDs and their numbers. At the same time, this extraordinary picture of international cooperation was developing in the background, and someone from my old school was running a Slack group, and people from all over the world were communicating on there, offering opportunities, saying, get to this gate at this time, get to this flight at this time, we can support you, we will help you. But over time it became clear that, again, the priority was for certain nations over others, and we kept on hitting a brick wall, one after the other. I think within the foundation, the team were being brilliantly supportive. We thought this was going to be not a good ending, and actually one of my colleagues came and stayed at the farm to make sure I had the support, because I basically turned into a zombie after weeks of not really sleeping and not being able to focus. The time went on, we had to keep on moving people around, keep on staying in touch and offering solutions, and I was researching land crossings and border crossings and the countries that might be able to help as the international options started to dwindle. I remember my partner was incredibly supportive, but at one point said, we need to get out of the house, we need to leave, we need to go and have a meal. So we went to a nearby city, going for an Indian takeaway, and I got a phone call. Not unusual, a number I didn't realise. Took the call. I was told within 5 minutes, expect another call, someone can help. And at this point I've been through so many dead ends that it felt too good to be true, but the call came through, and not only did this person have a flight that we could do, they had a way of getting into the airport, and they also had a destination to go to, and just that moment of the sheer ridiculousness of being in a car park in Derby, taking this call and just stopping, thinking this might be the breakthrough that we've been looking for so long, and thankfully it happened. I managed to coordinate with the individuals, some of whom were bringing their family members, others decided it wasn't worth the risk for their family members who would be safer if they remained. Coordinated their arrival at a particular hotel in a particular location at a particular time overnight, and then we had to go radio silent. They had to leave their phones behind and not be with anything that would connect them either to me or to Western people. The next call I got was them in the airport, safe and about to board. They all could only take a backpack or a rucksack with them, and they all took their Invictus Games kit, because they felt that was the symbol of the thing that held them together and of the organisation that helped them escape. The sheer relief and the tension that had been wound for so long in me was just such relief, because at the very least they were out, and I had done everything I possibly could have done in order to make that happen. Having made the enormous leap of getting them out of Afghanistan, it was now a situation where they were in a refugee camp in Abu Dhabi, being kind of covered by this organisation that helped us and supported by the UAE government. And the next step was visas. Where do we go from here? Where are they going to live? One of the competitors who managed to bring his wife, she was pregnant, she would later give birth in that same camp. They were there for over a year, waiting to find out what was next. And then the messages started to kind of come back of why are we still here? What's happening? This is awful. We're stuck in a kind of a room with a bed without an answer of where to go next. And so it felt like it was still going on. It was still dragging on a year later, of desperately trying to find a country that would accept refugees that had managed to leave Afghanistan but didn't have the visa process and didn't have the ability to, as you and I would, go to an office with an identity card or passport and make an easy path to an onward nation. So it became really clear that the morale was really, really low. The initial boost from escaping was replaced eventually by this feeling of, I almost want to go back. It's almost as bad being here, trapped in this place with thousands of other refugees without an answer of where to go next. Fortunately, the organisation that helped us extract and the people on the ground in the camp were open to me visiting. So I was able to go and try and see them. However, I couldn't actually get into the camp because of the diseases that were arrived, and the conditions were so bad that there was a health risk and they wouldn't allow me to go in. So I delivered the kit, waited outside the camp, waved at them through a gate, and had to leave without meeting them properly. After a year, the visa application started to come back, and we were really fortunate that America said yes, Canada said yes, and Australia said yes. And I wanted to visit them in their new country, and we wanted to start laying the groundwork and the foundation for them to participate in the Invictus Games. And so I went to visit the biggest group of individuals that were in Sydney, Australia. It represented the first time that I would have met them in person, and it was actually quite random, walking around a corner in the middle of a train station where we'd agreed to meet, and just suddenly bumping into people who instantly threw their arms around me, called me brother, introduced me to their children who all knew by my name and who thanked me and had gifts. And it was extraordinary to relive all those feelings once again, because it actually manifested in a real way who the people were that we've been working with and working for. Having managed to find the team new places to live, new countries to move to, the next step really was how can we support them further in terms of integration into those communities. But the thing they all came back was, we bought our kit. We want to compete in the Invictus Games. That's what's been holding us together. Even during the camp, when I went to visit, they had been going to the gym, they had been running loops around the apartment block. They've been trying to keep fit because they felt that at some point they were going to be able to compete at the Invictus Games. It represented such a hold for them, such a beacon for them to be able to come back and compete again with other nations that support them and showcase into the world what the Invictus spirit really means. So given their feedback of really wanting to participate in the Invictus Games, it became clear that we had to bring them to Canada to get a team in the Invictus Games Vancouver Whistler 2025. This wouldn't be Team Afghanistan, they wouldn't be representing their country per se, but this is a team of resilient individuals who went through hell and really wanted to bring an end to that journey. A pinnacle of that journey would be their ability to participate as a team. So we were going to bring them here for Team Afghan Unconquered. Unfortunately, the nature of the ways in which we had to get them to their new location, the home they're now in, it's been a bit of a challenging process bringing them here in time for these games, so we were able to honour them in the opening ceremony.
When I marched in for the opening ceremony and I saw the Afghan Unconquered flag, but also it had Afghan Unconquered going around the message board within the stadium, it was a great sense of pride. Oh, and also a sense that, you know, that tenacity that goes behind that journey. Like, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, no one thought that was possible, and to be able to work with Sam and Michael and others to make that a reality was just a beautiful moment in time. And then on the other side of that, having people from all around the world come up and say, wow, it's amazing you're here, thank you for being here, what's your role, please pass our love and our thoughts onto the team. It was just a wonderful experience. From my perspective, it's about representation and it's about being here. And whether that's one person in Nunnari, myself, or 100 people, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The fact is, we're part of this beautiful footprint. We're part of the Invictus family, and people legitimately and sincerely are so welcoming and hospitable to us being included. It's just a beautiful thing, and I can't wait to share that further with the boys at home and ensure that we get the next opportunity for them to be here as well. So the stage of the journey for Afghan Unconquered is about ultimately representing Afghan Unconquered at Invictus Games. But like I said earlier, the end point is that representation, but the journey, I think, is just as important as the final destination. And in the context of the journey, it's about developing more than just sporting skills for these boys. It's about developing connections with other people within their community. It's about developing other connections with other adaptive sports communities and people and organisations. And then it's about creating other pathways within sports or education or workforce. So that's one part of the journey. But ultimately, we're training for one common goal, and that is to represent Afghan Unconquered, the Invictus Games. And I have no doubt in my mind that after having represented the team here and having an athlete here representing, flying the flag and doing that team so proud, no doubt in my mind that we'll be back in full force at the next Invictus Games. Look, from my perspective, in the context of what I know, the Invictus Games Foundation went above and beyond, just the standard processes to do everything they could do to assist, resettlement of the Afghan boys from Afghanistan to other countries, and in my context to Australia. And I say this sincerely, I firmly believe that going above and beyond is one of those values that is quite intrinsic to the Invictus Games philosophy or values in itself, in that we go above and beyond to support each other, we go above and beyond to face whatever barriers we face on a daily basis and overcome those, and we go above and beyond to compete as hard as we can. So it's really great to know that that's just not a tagline, that's actually a belief, and that's something that happens every day to make to make this event and other opportunities that Invictus provides a reality.
Team Afghan Unconquered represents all that is brilliant about the Invictus Games and its community. The individuals themselves who chose to take their kit with them as a symbol of the thing that brought them together. The international nations that we worked with in order to find those opportunities for extraction, safety, onward recovery. And the people that stood up and cheered in the opening ceremony when we announced their team and the people that they were expecting to see compete this week. It's such a metaphor for the way in which things are better when we bring the international community together, and that there is a bond that cannot be broken between those that have served, especially those who have been injured in service.